Strap on your earbuds, ladies and gents. You're listening to a full Monty version of Broken Boner Radio.
Don't feel down if you can't get it up. We all need to find the fun in being dysfunctional. It can be brutal if you've got a limp noodle. Getting hard is hard to do, but we're here for you. It's Broken Boner Radio.
Here's your host, Daniel Canfield.
I want to welcome Elaine Williams to our show today. Hi, Elaine.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. This is our maiden voyage. I'm your first.
Woo!
Or you're my first. How does that work?
Oh my God, am I popping your cherry? Or are you popping mine?
In a sense, I feel like with my message and my platform, I'm popping the world's cherry on this topic of erectile dysfunction.
I know. I am so excited to actually get to talk about this with you. Yeah, we're going to talk about ED.
I know, and everything people don't know about ED, which is a ton.
A ton.
But I'm excited to have you on the show, especially my first show. I was blown away when I read through your, everything that what haven't you done? I mean, you're an award-winning stand-up comedian. You've toured nationally. You're a featured blogger in the Huffington Post.
Yeah, you're very kind. Thank you.
You were on America's Got Talent?
Yeah, America's Got Talent. I got through 6 rounds. I never made it on the TV, but they filmed me, and I think I wasn't crazy enough, or I was on like a wheel, a unicycle or something. But yeah, I like to say jack of all trades, master of none, but that's just a joke. But yeah, I'm a comedian and a coach, and I'm fascinated by human potential, and I love strong, awesome men. So I'm so excited to hear your story, Daniel, and just hear about, because you're like this gorgeous hunky guy with 3 gorgeous sons. Your wife is beautiful, and you guys are nice. You're like the Barbie and Ken of California, but you're real too. Like I'm in love. I have a whole family crush on you guys.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm blushing. And to top all that off, I have a broken boner.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I saw your clip. You've had this amazing life. You're already successful. A lot of people would just want to go play golf, call it a day. So why are you coming out of the closet now, so to speak?
That's a good way to put it. That's actually kind of the way I feel. Ironically, erectile dysfunction is a hot topic now. There's, all the commercials on TV about Cialis and Viagra and all that stuff. But oddly enough, that's pretty much, I've learned almost everything anybody knows about the topic. I discovered that I was actually born with erectile dysfunction.
Wow.
That's a new science. My doctor, Dr. Goldstein, who's the director of San Diego Sexual Medicine, has been working with me now for about 5 years or so. I always knew something wasn't right. I became sexually active in 1974. I was 21 years old. And my first sexual experience, I was completely limp.
Wow.
Completely turned on, completely viscerally stimulated and excited and all of that, but my dick didn't get hard.
Wow.
And from that moment on, as I continued to explore my sexuality, like most young men do, I was constantly having struggles. Of course, that was back in the 70s. Nobody talked about erectile dysfunction, so I didn't know.
Right.
I just knew that things didn't seem right. And I suffered through some pretty terrifying situations through my youth with women. And as a matter of fact, at one point, because I couldn't get an erection, the huge question came to my mind that may strike a lot of men who suffer from ED was I gay?
Right. I'm sure that would be like, what's wrong,
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I have these points of inspiration from time to time. My wife will tell you, I'll wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh my God, I just had this amazing thought for the show or for my, what I'm talking about with erectile dysfunction. But I had today what I call an Einsteinian moment. And, his theory of relativity?
Yes.
I came up with, I realized part of my purpose in this world is to disprove the theory of erectivity.
Oh, I love it. That could be a t-shirt, a bumper sticker.
There you go. And what I found throughout my life was, and it's funny, I speak from, the stage. I've spoken to men's groups and stuff, and I use this picture of a butterball turkey with the, the little pop-up thermometer that comes with the turkey. When it's done, the little red thing pops up.
Sure, uh-huh.
And I said, it's ironic, but I've learned through life of suffering with erectile dysfunction that women and we as men look at that pop-up like if we're turned on, if we're horny, that'll pop up. I used to have women look at me and are like, "Are you okay?"
Right.
Like, "Am I doing something wrong? Am I not pretty enough?" Some women got nasty. Well, I've never had that problem before. What's wrong with you?
Oh,
But it's been societized that, and I'm still working. This literally just came to me as I was driving home today to do our interview. There's like this equation that certain stimulation, visceral stimulation, and I'm going to craft this. It's actually going to be on my website at danielcanfield.com. This little equation, and it'll be funny and cute with funny characters, but basically says if you have visceral stimulation and all these things that are supposed to get you turned on, it is supposed to equal an erection 100% of the time.
right.
That's what everybody thinks.
Right.
Now, what the hell does it mean when it doesn't equal 100%?
Yeah. I love these questions that you're asking because, I think that our culture, there's so much shame. Like, as a woman, I know I would feel like, is something wrong? Am I doing something wrong? Because, dating in my 40s, I've definitely had this experience and I've had men get nasty with me. And I internalized it too of like, is something wrong with me? I gained a few pounds, I think we go to that shame place a lot of times, and it may not have nothing to do with anything, right? I mean,
Exactly.
thank goodness you're coming out and talking about it because I feel like for so long, all we've had are the take the pill, look at the commercials, or sit in the dark and be confused.
Right. And nobody talks about it.
Right.
I'm doing another little piece for my website called Beyond the Little Blue Pill. Matter of fact, I'll probably have a guest on to speak about that because I've interviewed some men. I have a 50-year-old male that I've interviewed who was willing. One thing I'm finding about my purpose, and this is one thing I'm really excited about, I'm willing, and according to my doctor, Dr. Goldstein, there's nobody out there willing to talk like I'm talking. Like I am becoming the voice of erectile dysfunction. I am ready to stand on any stage, get on any TV show, use my podcast or whatever to say, look, I've lived with this my whole life. I can speak to this topic, and I want everyone else to get comfortable with it because there's so much people don't know and don't understand. And if they reached a deeper understanding, we would be a better society. Relationships would be better. I think men would feel more masculine all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, part of the deeper narrative is we are socialized to believe as men, a big part of our masculinity is about how big and hard our dick gets.
Yep.
And if it doesn't, what does that mean? What does that do to our egos? And what does it do to the women that we're with?
Right. I mean, I think so many times there is a whole identity crisis wrapped up around guys with their dicks and women with either, our ass and our boobs. And even if we're taught different things, the media is giving us totally different messages. There's so much mixed messages going on. And then you layer that with the shame, and then you layer that with the woo-woo of sexuality. It's a wonder we're all not complete basket cases,
Exactly. Well, and as you mentioned boobs and asses. For almost 4 decades, maybe 5 decades now, our society has taught women and told us men that to be a sexy woman, an A cup doesn't cut it.
Right.
And what did decades of women go out and do? They stuffed implants in their boobs to make them look or feel more sexy. And I don't behoove anybody. One thing about me, I do not judge anyone for anything. I applaud women who feel that's going to make them feel sexier about themselves. But when you compare that like to a man's erection, hopefully women empathetically can kind of understand sometimes. If we get erectile dysfunction, and here's a fact that most people don't know, most men over the course of their lifetime are going to begin to suffer some form of ED.
Wow.
Now, I shared that at this men's camp a couple of months ago in front of about 30 men who were millennial aged all the way up to my age. I'm 63.
Wow, you look amazing, dude.
You should have seen the jaws drop.
Wow.
What I have is called corporal erectile tissue fibrosis. Now, I was born with that, but that is an actual degenerative condition that happens to a man's erectile tissue in his penis as we age. Now, not all men suffer from it, but as we continue to age, most men will start to have this problem. I was born with basically a 70-year-old dick.
Wow.
And it got worse.
I mean, you have 3 gorgeous, hunky boys. So you were still able to
Yeah, 2 popsicle sticks and a rubber band. No.
Sounds kinky. Can I watch?
In all honesty, I mean, in my earlier years, when I was fathering my children in my 30s and what was I, late 30s or so, I could at times get a partial erection. It was hard to sustain it. So I was capable of bearing children, obviously. But it was a very big challenge. If I changed positions, I would immediately go limp. Could not lay on my back at all. I couldn't perform that way. But yeah, I was able to father children. There was some functionality there. And again, as I got older, it got worse and worse. And I've gone through all the treatments known to mankind for erectile. Well, almost. I didn't do stem cell research, and that's really, really new, or stem cell treatments.
Okay.
But when I met my current wife, Stacy, we've been married 20 years. We've been together 22 years. That's right when erectile dysfunction started to get talked about, because Viagra and that started to come out on the marketplace. What I'm really excited about, Elaine, is Stacy's actually agreed to come on as a guest.
Ah, she's awesome. And she's so hot for the listeners. She is absolutely stunning.
I'm really excited to have her on the show because as I've talked to more and more people, I've also had a chance to talk to women, and I realized there's over 30 million men in America who suffer some form of erectile dysfunction.
Wow.
And that's considered a very conservative number because there's a lot of men who just won't admit that they've got a problem. Well, that told me as I started to interview more people that if there's 30 million men in America that suffer from this problem, that means there's at least 30 million women in America who have no clue as to what's going on.
Right.
And causes the kind of the relationship problems. Like, you're a relationship coach. Does this stuff ever come up in your work?
Yeah. And, I was just laughing because, I think it's great that she's coming on and that you guys can talk about this as a couple. And, I was just laughing, Daniel, because I dated a comic, and it was the first stand-up comic I had dated. I was new in the business, and he was a little bit older, and he had horrible problems. He was on some antidepressants, and he would get he had issues, and I ended up becoming friends with his ex-girlfriend, and so we would all kind of talk about how traumatic it was for everybody involved.
When you say issues, you mean erectile dysfunction issues?
Well, this guy had issues around his issues, but that was, one of his issues was ED, and he would just lash out. But yeah, this is way more common than people realize, and then I'm thinking of, not that I'm a whore or anything, but I was thinking of this other guy that I dated who he had gout, and instead of you could just not eat rich foods, he would choose to have lobster and blah, blah, blah. And then he would just take this medicine, but then he couldn't have sex. And I remember as a woman, it always made me feel like you're choosing lobster over me. And
Yeah.
I already was dealing with self-esteem. He was a narcissist, whatever. But I feel like there's so many issues already, and then you add this into the pot, and it just, there's pile on the shame, and
Yeah.
and I know a lot of single women in their 40s, and that is a major concern because women in their 40s, we really want to have sex now more than ever.
Right.
And and we want to have a quality relationship. We're not whores, but and so that is a major. I have this one woman friend in Austin. She is gorgeous and hot, and she cannot seem to find a guy who, I think I mentioned him before. He had another thing with his boner. So anyway, yeah, I think this is a major thing, and I'm so happy that there's a place where people can come talk about it and realize they're not alone. They can identify.
Exactly. It's interesting you used the phrase earlier in your comment about, you add this sexual dysfunction stuff to the pot. And my perspective is that's one of the things that's already in the pot for so many men.
Yeah.
It's already there. Then you pile everything else on top of it, makes it worse. One of the biggest fears most men have, do you know what that is?
No.
Is that my last boner?
Oh, wow.
I don't think women ever realize that. My goal is to, one, educate men, educate women, but also to build an empathic field for men to have about themselves and their own masculinity and what's involved with their sexuality and their prowess and all that. But also to help give women an empathic field to look at their men a different way, And these are also life mates, in the LGBT community too. This isn't always heterosexual, but to help create an empathic field for women to understand that, what's the big, you haven't had children, correct?
No.
But for a lot of women, that fear of not being able to have children anymore is devastating. It speaks to their femininity, their womanhood. When they start to go through menopause, it's like, oh my God, I'm not a woman anymore. They suffer that self-definitive thing of, well, gosh, if I can't have children, am I really a woman anymore? What's my purpose now? Well, attach that to a man's erection. It's the same kind of thing we go through. If we can't get an erection, what does that mean about me as a man?
I never thought of it like that exactly, but I can so relate as a woman, not having kids. I mean, I have that like, wow, it's always been I could choose, but
Right.
I know I'm going to lose the ability to choose, but not feeling sexy,
Right.
and I think that's, part of the aging thing. But yeah, I think there's so much identification the way guys are sexualized and socialized in our culture. And I would like to ask you a question, Danielle. So let's say for our female listeners, let's say that they're, they're in a relationship and it's going well and they've been intimate for a while and then they're getting intimate and then he loses his erection or he can't get it up. Can you give us some advice for both of the people? Like, what would you suggest?
Sure. Well, first of all, for the women is to understand that right now your guy is in total panic mode. If you've ever seen those movies of a submarine and depth chargers are going off and all the buzzers and wheels,
Like Danger, Will Robinson, danger, right? Okay.
That's exactly what's happening inside your guy. He'll never tell you. Rarely. I'm beginning to find that the millennial men are a little more sharing, a little more caring, but I see that as an evolvement in our society of both men and women that we talk about more stuff. Things like Broken Boner Radio are out there. People are going to hear,
So
real
great.
talk about dysfunction. But your man is panicked.
Yeah.
And when we're triggered like that, depending upon the guy, we're going to choose a lot of different ways to react. One is to get huffy. Some men who are less evolved, I think you mentioned one guy really got nasty with you. That's not uncommon. But ladies, it's not you. Just know it's not you. It's he's trying to deal with this. He's not a man. And he's expected to be a man right now.
Right.
Be as loving as you can. Be as understanding. Cuddling is awesome. My wife and I used to cuddle a lot before. By the way, nobody knows yet, but I have a penile implant. That was the last of my stages of going through all the different treatments, and that's the last thing that was left for me. And that, frankly, that has brought me to this purpose, is now having I basically have a bionic cock.
Wow. Ooh, tell me more.
Yeah.
Like the $6 million man. Remember he was...
Exactly. 2012, from the waist down, I'm bionic.
Wow.
And it's been a phenomenal change, not just on the carnal, wow, I can have sex anytime I want, but what it's done for me emotionally, psychologically, how my sexuality has evolved, and how I feel about myself as a man and the masculine me. That's what all of this is about. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Dr. Goldstein, who was also one of the top surgeons for doing penile implant. He does sexual medicine for men and women. And actually, on our podcast, he's going to have his own little, call it Just the Tip. He's going to have...
I'm getting all hot over here. Okay.
That's okay. Just don't electrocute yourself sweating into your microphone.
Okay.
But he's going to actually give medical tips. He's also got what's called the ED in all caps education corner on our website. He is my go-to medical expert. I am not a doctor. Everything I speak to is from my own experience. Anything I do kind of get into technically, like corporal erectile tissue fibrosis, is his diagnosis for me. That's what it's called.
Okay.
It is now becoming known as one of the conditions that most men are going to go through in their life to some degree. But he is my medical go-to expert.
Cool. That's awesome. And he's going to have a little thing. So penile implant, do you mind talking about it? Like, was there a long recovery thing? Did you
I'd
have
show
to
it to you if I could, but we're on.
Send me a picture. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Oh,
You know what? Let me tell you the very first thing. men and women alike, when they're like, oh my God. And I show them the prosthesis or a picture of actually the prosthesis. All of it's internal. It's not unlike getting a breast implants as
Okay.
far as it's a 40-minute surgery. It's about a 6-week recovery time, but everything is internal. If you were to see me naked, I look as normal as any other man.
Okay.
Appearance-wise, I look completely normal.
And now let me ask you, Daniel, did you ever do the pill thing
Oh, yeah.
before?
Uh-huh.
And do you feel like this is better because there's less chemicals going through your body and there's side effects or?
Well, it's not that it's better. Well, let me go back on my history of again, I was with my wife, Stacy, since 1994, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And she was my first sexual partner that Edie was talked about. So I was a little more aware. Pills started coming out. I actually went and bought a penis pump, the
Okay.
vacuum pump.
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen ads for it, but I didn't know if they really worked or, I thought it was maybe like a gag gift or something.
No, they really work. As a matter of fact, if you remember Austin Powers,
Yes, yes.
where I think they're at customs and the guy's pulling stuff out of his bag and he pulls out the Swedish-made penis pump and
Right.
Austin is like, "Oh, that's not my bag, baby. That's not mine." And then he pulls out the receipt made out to Austin Powers.
Yeah.
Well, I had just used mine. Envision this. We had 20 of our closest best friends at the movie theater on premiere night. I think it was in 1997, I believe. I had just used mine
Oh my God.
before we went to the movies. And now we're sitting, I had no freaking idea this was going to be on the movie. That scene comes up. People are rolling in the aisle. It's so funny. We're laughing our asses off. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, and here's all my friends. I'm like, if they had any idea
Oh, wow.
that I actually used one of those.
Wow.
And it was prescribed. I went to a doctor back then who prescribed me as having erectile dysfunction. And I actually got a real one that's prescribed and really works. And
Okay.
it worked great for a while. Clumsy as hell. Not real sexy.
Right. Excuse me for a second.
I'm excited to have my wife on the show because she's going to talk to what it was like living with a man with erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
But then Viagra came out and sans get rid of the pump and all the really not fun mechanical stuff.
Right.
We started using Viagra and that worked relatively well. Although the thing about corporeal erectile tissue fibrosis, like I have and what most men are eventually going to suffer from, if you think of the tissue in the penis, think of it as like a spongy material.
Mm-hmm.
Whole purpose in what causes an erection is it fills with blood
Right.
and it retains the blood and it gets erect. Very much like a
Right.
sponge. If you put sponge in water, a brand new sponge, it soaks up the water really well. But as the sponge ages, it loses its ability to do what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And the tissue, the fibrosis part, the erectile tissue fibrosis, is the tissue in our penis begins to lose the ability to retain the blood.
Okay. So like the blood goes to it and then just kind of comes back
Just
out.
goes right through.
Okay.
Doesn't stay.
Okay.
Yeah, hence no erection.
Okay.
Hence broken boner.
Right. Got it. Okay.
So drugs will work up to a certain point. It's all about the tissue being able to retain the
The
blood.
blood. Right.
As that tissue deteriorates over age, or in my case from birth, or some men have an accident, they get hit in the nuts. I mean, there's a lot of things that can cause the plumbing down there to not work properly.
Oh.
But once that plumbing's damaged or doesn't work well anymore, Viagra and those drugs work on blood flow
Oh.
and assist in helping that tissue work. But as the tissue begins to fail, so do the drugs.
Okay. And I know that, don't they have side effects? Like you have to be careful with your heart or
Oh, yeah.
sometimes you can
Well, did you
have
know
a
where
boner
Viagra
that.
came from?
No, I don't know much about it.
This is a fascinating story that most people don't know. In the very beginning, when they were doing testing on Viagra, it wasn't being tested for erections. It was being used as a heart medicine.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine? You're like, honey, I had a really great doctor's visit today.
Yeah, here they got this room full of men taking this, and some have placebos and others have this drug and they're getting boners. They turn the research around and says, oh my gosh, this helps men get erections. It's one of those rare cases where they're developing a drug and it ends up having a multi-billion-dollar use
Wow.
in the marketplace than what it was originally designed to do.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a heart medicine, and that's why men with heart conditions and stuff, the labels, and it's scary, and Dr. Goldstein always warns people, you've got to get it prescribed. If
Yeah.
you start taking this, the black market stuff, there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't even Viagra or Cialis. It's got other stuff in it
Yep.
that could kill you. But yeah, I mean, it's a serious thing.
Mm.
And men who have heart conditions should not be taking it.
Wow.
But always, see your doctor.
Right.
If you eat fatty foods, the fat in your blood takes the active ingredient and it like makes it non-active.
Oh, wow.
Like if Stacey and I were going to be intimate, I could not eat a hamburger and then take Viagra. It
Okay.
had absolutely no effect.
No effect. And then what happens, like, let's say someone is, they're getting the tissue is becoming more and more like the old sponge. And then so when they take the Viagra, it doesn't keep the blood in there. So it stops
It's not
working.
as effective.
So then do they try to
Exactly.
take more, or like people just give up?
Well, they do have different dosages of Viagra,
Okay.
and you can, but it gets to a certain point to where
This is too
if
dangerous.
you take any more than that, you're gonna
Yeah.
probably have a heart attack. Who knows?
God. Okay. So wow. Okay. So you did, so you did the pump, then you did the Viagra stuff, and then you were like, okay, we got to find something else.
Yeah, and at this point, I was working with Dr. Goldstein.
Okay.
And I had seen about penile implants on TV not on TV, but looking through the internet and stuff. And so I thought, well, that looks interesting. I Googled and actually found Dr. Goldstein on the internet, and it actually showed a penile implant surgery.
Oh wow.
At the time that this video was made, he was actually had his practice back in Boston. And I happened to notice that his link on his site went to his clinic here in San Diego.
Oh wow. Okay.
Exactly. World-renowned guy in this
In
field.
your backyard.
Is in my backyard.
Wow.
So that was an immediate, quick trip down to see Dr. Goldstein. And I was ready to walk in and say, Doctor, Viagra's not really working much for me anymore. Let's look at this implant. And the thing I love about Dr. Goldstein and his whole team is they're very conservative. And he says, look, he goes, the implant is always there, but let's try some other things.
Oh, I love that.
And the first thing he had me try was injections.
Okay.
There's a serum that you inject into the shaft of your penis.
Oh my God, does it hurt? Shit. Ouch.
Not as bad as you would think.
I'm like cringing, and I don't even have a penis. Like in the tip part or like the side?
No, in the shaft on the side.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt that bad. And I'm a needle phobe.
Yeah, me too, man.
I can't watch on TV when they're doing blood transfusions.
Yeah, me neither.
And
I
stuff.
pass out. I'm like,
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking,
oh,
I'm a needle phobe, and I'm going to learn to stick a needle in my penis. That's as men. I can speak for most men out there. When it comes to our sexuality and being able to be sexual and get an erection, we'll do just about anything.
yep.
So I learned how to do it, and it was successful for me for about a year.
Okay.
And then it too began to fail. Because it works way differently than like Viagra and all those drugs. You have to be viscerally stimulated for the drug to work.
Okay.
The injections, you could be painting cabinets with one hand and injecting.
You're like,
kitchen
"Honey."
cabinets in one hand and inject you need an extra hand. I guess your girlfriend or wife or life mate could help, but inject with the other hand, and within about 30 seconds to a minute, you'll get an erection.
Cool.
So that was another step that he really requested that I take, because he says, when you do the penile implant, as great as it is, there's no going back.
Right.
So let's treat you and see if any of these other things, and realize too, I'm in the middle of his testing, finding out about, what's going on with me and how long I've had erectile dysfunction, and this is when we began to see the research that, oh my God, I was actually born this way.
Wow.
Because as I was telling he and his therapist and stuff, more stories going back.
You kind of put the puzzle pieces together and went, oh, wow.
Exactly.
See, and I love that he's not one of those, let's just operate kind of people. He sounds awesome.
Yeah, he really knows his stuff. And he's as crazy and loony as I am.
Okay.
I'm so thrilled to have him as a part of my team.
It's like a bromance.
It's a bromance. And his wife, Sue, is also a sex therapist at his clinic.
Oh
He has
my
a whole staff
gosh.
there. I'm going to have some other of his people on the show. He has a sex therapist and a sexual physical therapist that's going to come on the show. So Broken Boner Radio is going to be a very lighthearted, fun, but very educational place for people to come to find out about erectile dysfunction.
I
I'm
freaking
excited
love
about
this, Daniel. Sorry, this is a little bit off tangent, but I got to tell you this story because I grew up in Texas, Bible Belt, very conservative. If you were a boy, you could go get some, but if you were a girl and you had more than one or two boyfriends, you were a slut, a whore, fallen woman, that mixed message thing. Anyway, there was this woman who came to perform. Her name was Annie Sprinkle, and she would do this whole performance artist thing basically about her cervix. And she would put her boobs on your head and take a picture, and she would open up her cervix with a special mic thing that you could walk by and look in it. And I remember I was just like, whatever, this isn't theater. But I'll never forget that all the guys that I went to drama school with were like, that was amazing. I just learned so much. And I thought, wow, how great. Like, sexuality is part of being human. It's part of being life. But it's like we're all walking around in the dark, bumbling around.
Exactly.
So I just think this is awesome.
Well, thank you. It's become my purpose, as my wife calls, the third act of my life.
Yeah.
Since I'm now 63, and I'm really excited about it. But to get back to my treatments that I went through,
Right.
I did the injections for about a year, and then they started to not work, just like Viagra had previously slowly stopped working.
And it let you down, but I'm bummed.
It let,
Ah!
it let me down. Exactly.
I
And
couldn't
so
resist.
I walked into Dr. Goldstein's office and I said, these aren't working anymore. And he goes, well, it's time for the implant. And I said, okay, sign me up. I was scared shitless.
I bet. It's like your dick. Oh my God.
I know. A 40-minute operation. It took me, actually, they say 6 weeks recovery time. And I told Dr. Goldstein, I says, my wife and I have a Vegas vacation planned 4 weeks out. It's always me to push the envelope.
Right.
And I says, is there any way I could get cleared in 4 weeks? And he goes, well, he looked down at my bandaged up dick and he goes, well, that's up to you and that. He goes,
Ooh.
that's kind of early. He said, I can't promise you it's not going to be a little painful, but we'll see. So at 4 weeks, I went in instead of 6 weeks, and he gave me the A-OK.
Wow.
So we went to Vegas. And I'll have to admit, the first couple times around, it was it was much
Tender?
better at 6 weeks out. It was tender.
Okay. I have to ask this. Do you have to do like physical therapy exercises like to get it back in shape?
No, because it's bionic.
Penis push-ups? Okay, so just like the flesh around it was sore, tender, like it's healing because
exactly. And people can go to the website at danielcanfield.com and there'll be a whole thing on that particular. There's different types. Mine is a type that inflates. So basically, there's a bladder that it holds saline.
Okay.
It's all made out of silicone material, but the fluid inside, there's a bladder that's implanted up by my bladder, but it holds X amount of ounces of saline. And then there's 2 cylinders that are real long that basically go along each side of my penis, which basically replaces the corporal tissue that's on the side of the penis.
Right.
Those 2 tubes go inside there. And then there's a couple small tubes that go down to a little round pump thing that hangs between my testicles. To pump up, I just squeeze that several times, and
Voila!
transfers the saline from the bladder into the shaft, and I get an erection.
Wow.
And the cool part is, it can stay up as long as I want.
Wow.
I don't have to worry about the 4-hour. They say with the other drugs, if you're erect more than 4 hours, call a doctor.
Right.
I've gone to sleep with it erect and woken up with it erect.
Oh, wow.
I obviously didn't roll over in the middle of the night, or I would have.
Ouch.
I would have been in pain.
Wow. Okay, so it took about 6 weeks before you kind of felt like
it wasn't painful.
It wasn't painful. Okay.
And it's typical surgery pain. Anybody that's had abdomen surgery or whatever, it takes a while for the things to heal. And
do you have a scar along the side?
No, that's what's amazing. If I can find the link for the surgery that Dr. Goldstein did, it shows the whole thing. That's what intrigued me. I'm like, oh my God, that looks so simple.
Wow.
They make maybe 1.5 inch long incision on the front of your ball sack.
Wow.
Where all the soft skin is.
Uh-huh.
And everything is inserted through there. And once you heal, there's probably a scar there, but you
can't even see it. Right, it's ball sack.
Wrinkly the skin is. You can't see it.
Oh my God, that's amazing! Wow, thanks for being so open about that. Because that's fascinating to me. And now tell me, Daniel, have you talked all about this with your son?
Yes, that's another interesting story. What I have is genetic. The most current research is beginning to show that this corporal erectile tissue fibrosis can be handed down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Once, well, it's funny. I'm very transparent, and my boys are 30, 29, and 27. I've always been very transparent with them. Before I went in for the surgery, we sat down and had a long talk. I wanted to let them know what was going on. And my oldest son, shortly after that, pulled me aside and goes, Dad, can we talk?
Oh, God.
Because some of the things you were talking about, I think, are happening to me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the more stories he shared with me were a direct mirror
Wow.
of what I was going through when I was his age.
Mm.
And I said, Ryan, you know what? Go see Dr. Goldstein.
Yep.
And so he went down and made an appointment, and they did a thorough bunch of tests on him. And that's when Dr. Goldstein called me. He says, you and Ryan have the exact same thing.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's into the fact that looks like it's a genetic thing. My other two sons seem to be completely fine.
Wow. Okay.
Fast forward to, I'm getting ready to develop this platform, being the spokesperson for the Voice of Erectile Dysfunction, and launching this podcast, Broken Boner Radio. And I have no idea where this is all headed.
Right.
This could crash and burn tomorrow, or who knows where I could be. But I thought, I should probably talk to those closest to me about what I'm doing.
So they're not surprised, right?
Yeah, hey, like my dad, he's 89 years old. I could just see somebody in his elder care community coming over and say, hey, Mr. Canfield, your son Daniel, he was on like TV talking about his dick.
Right.
And my dad going, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, what? So I thought, well, I should probably tell my dad about it. And it was the most fascinating, deepest, most loving conversation I think we have ever had.
Wow.
And he started to share stories with me as I was telling him about my past. And he goes, Daniel, I had the same thing.
Oh my gosh.
And I quickly realized he was from, what do they call it, the Great Generation?
Right.
He didn't even have pornography to compare to. That generation had no knowledge.
Wow. So
he thought having soft, limp, sometimes semi-hard was just normal. And he dealt with it. And, here I am. He gave birth to me. But he had no clue until I started talking to him about it. And then I says, well, Dad, did you ever notice, like, if you change? Oh, yeah. I couldn't change. And so I went back to Dr. Goldstein, and now we're doing the continued research.
Right.
But Dr. Goldstein's like, there's 3 generations that this can be passed on genetically.
Wow.
The great news I have for all men out there, and I want to really drive this home, there's hope. There's help. Don't be knuckleheads. Get empowered and go out and find a good resource. Dr. Goldstein's website will be on, the link to his website's on our website. It'll be on the show notes for this. You don't have to go this alone. You don't have to bury it. You don't have to isolate.
I'm so glad you're doing this, Daniel. And thank you so much for sharing the whole family history. Because, another thing that I keep thinking about is porn. It's everywhere. And even if you're not into it that much, you can't help but not see it some places. And I think there's a lot of comparison. I think a lot of guys think they're supposed to, look like whatever, and they don't realize that that person's been fluffed and photoshopped and angles and lighting. I mean, you can make things look way different from just the angle.
And I don't know this, but maybe one of them has an implant.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, but there's that unconscious, subconscious comparison. Yeah, so I'm so glad you're talking about this. And now tell us about your book. I'm dying to know about your book.
Well, Elaine, thank you for asking, because, again, this whole journey has been so cathartic for me. And as I've begun to unfold the layers of my life and living with erectile dysfunction, all these little stories keep popping up of things that I remember. And my wife one day stopped me and she goes, honey, you need to put this in a book. And it soon dawned on me, oh my God. So I'm crafting this book called Born Limp.
Born free. I mean, born limp.
Born Limp. And it basically will chronicle my entire lifetime. Now, the first chapter, or one of the first couple chapters, is called My Crazy Eights. I was 8 years old when I first realized I was different than all the other boys. 8 years old.
Okay.
We were in somebody's house. I can close my eyes and I'm right there. And we were all just being silly 8-year-old boys going, I'll show you yours if you show me mine. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. I was the only one in that little group of boys that didn't have a little boner.
Oh, wow.
And I remember being teased, but I was different than the other kids in that room. Now, some people will freak out and go, oh my God, that's so wrong. And we were just little kids being stupid.
Yeah, no, that's what you do when you're a kid.
But that was my first recollection that my little peepee was different than everyone
Something's
else's.
different here. Yeah, yeah.
So Born Limp is a book that will start at that early age and chronicle all the different things I went through in my life living with erectile dysfunction, the awarenesses that I had, the teasing that happened, the bullying that happened, both from guys and girls. So that's probably going to come out sometime in 2017.
For anybody who's listening, like, are you coaching men? Because to me, you have so much wisdom and just to help everybody with masculinity, and maybe they don't even have some of the issues, the broken boner thing, but is there a way to work with you?
The program that I did at the men's group a couple of months ago was called Behind the Sexual Armor of the 21st Century Male. And that's one of the programs that I'm crafting that will probably come out on my website as a webinar series. And it basically talks, I go to the deeper narrative about, this armor. Remember I told you about the armor that I built? I'm finding more and more men have this armor. We know. Guys, come on. We know. When you look in that mirror in the morning, there's all this shit out in front of you that you've put out there so nobody can really find out who you really are.
Right.
I call that the man in the mirror moment. And we create all this armor. And I talk about how we first recognize what that armor is and how to feel comfortable enough to get vulnerable and sensitive and look within your core and find out what's really inside of you that's important. And to maybe not be afraid to let go of some of this stuff. Our sexual prowess obviously is one of the big ones. That's one reason why I didn't hang with men very much growing up. Because my experience with groups of guys getting together, it was just all sword crossing. Everybody wanted to get their dicks out and tell their biggest conquest stories.
Right.
And I wasn't equipped for it. I had to lie.
Oh, that must have been excruciating.
All the stories I used to make up just to hang with guys, I finally got to a point like, this isn't fun. Because I'd go home, I'm like, that was total fucking bullshit.
Right.
Everything I just said to those guys was totally fab. Or I would have taken a small story
and embellished.
And I'd embellish it. Like they'd see me leave with a girl at a bar. Like, oh, Daniel, with Sarah Sue, how'd that go down? Well, it didn't get up.
Right.
But
but you can't say that.
It stayed down. But
right.
That's not the story I told. That is not the story I told. And I got tired of lying.
But Daniel, I have to wonder, like, how many of those other guys are telling, stories too?
Every guy out there listening knows.
Yeah.
And that's that man in the mirror moment. And that's one thing I try to teach is let's get real. To me, what has to happen is the dialogue has to change. And that's, I talk about one of my missions is I want to open the dialogue about erectile dysfunction and about our masculinity and all that whole narrative. That it's going to take men willing to learn about themselves enough to know that, okay, first of all, if you're tying all your masculinity around how sexually prowess you are, we need to talk about that. And what does that really mean? And you kind of break all that down. And it's there for women too. Women will learn just as much from this curriculum as the men will because they'll begin to understand their guy more. But as we change the dialogue in our society about our masculinity, we can start to treat each other differently. Men are the worst. Part of my program was about we beat the crap out of each other as men. By constantly topping each other with our masculine stories, whether it's sexual conquest or how much money we make or how many fast cars we drive or how many homes we own. It's always this stomp on our chest kind of thing. And it's like, stop the bullshit.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting because as a woman, I'm like, we don't have to do that for me, So I think that's awesome. Just have it be authentic and real and what's really important,
And we got to start somewhere. So I'm willing to be the target. I'll get up on stage. I'll put my face out.
You'll be the lightning rod.
I'll be the lightning rod. You go ahead. You bring it, people. If there's one topic I can talk about, it's sexuality and masculinity and erectile dysfunction and the masculinity dysfunction that all this stuff brings.
That's so great. And as a woman, I love sex. I really do. And I've done a lot of work around healing from stuff that happened to me a long time ago. But, as a woman, I also really love cuddling and I love oral things. And, I'm with this awesome new guy and he pleases me in ways I never even thought were possible. So it's not all about his dick.
We
And
got more skills than just our
oh my
dicks.
God. And I never think, well, he's not fucking me. Like I'm like, I am delighted and it's fun and intimate and sweet. And it's not always about just like bam, bam, bam. And so, I wonder how much.
Elaine, kudos to you for being more evolved as a woman, because there are women out there, and I've talked to men and I've talked to some women that are, if he can't fuck me, I don't even want to talk to him.
Yeah. Well, oh,
It's like, whoa.
yeah.
So, like I
That's
said,
not,
it's a
yeah.
two-edged conversation.
It is. Yeah. Well, I just love this. And, so okay. So your book is coming out. It's called Born Limp.
Uh-huh.
And then tell us your webpage again.
My full website is danielcanfield.com.
Okay.
And then the podcast site is brokenboner.com, where they can get all of our podcasts.
Love it, love it, love it. I'm sure you're going to be like telling us more about your programs and you're going to be doing some webinars and all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I have no idea where this is headed. It astounds me every day as I talk to more and more people and do interviews and get to meet people that I'm excited about the prospects. All I'm going to do is be authentic, be myself. I am a little irreverent. I do know how to conjugate the F word, and I will do it quite often on this show probably, but that's just me.
I love it. I think if you can bring humor to anything that's uncomfortable, everybody breathes. And, if you don't laugh, you might fart. So we'd rather you laugh, right?
Exactly.
More fun.
My production team will edit out any burps or farts in the middle of our show. So
Okay. Unless it gets a good laugh, then whatever you need.
How can people get a hold of you on your website to get your coaching and all of that?
Oh, well, thank you. I speak on college campuses. And so right now that's ElaineWilliams.com. And then I'm also working on my own new program called Relationship Rehab. It's really targeted towards women 40 and up who want to get over the bad boy syndrome and, just have some old junk. I call it like clearing out your man clutter because I had given up. I had taken myself off the market, Daniel. I was like, I'm just going to keep buying my little vibrators and buckets of KY and call it a day.
By the way, I'm sure an AC version of a vibrator is way cheaper long term than getting one with batteries.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to know because I actually have a whole drawer full of broken ones. Because I was like, can you recycle them? Is this bad for the environment? What do you do? Has this become a Whole Foods bag? Like, oh God. But anyway, I had I hadn't totally given up, but I just kind of shelved it and then did some more inner work. And out of that, poof, this amazing Australian guy came into my life and it's been the most delicious. He's like sensitive. I'm still
An
sort of
Aussie
pinching myself.
Is he from down under?
And it's so funny because I'm like, well, I guess we both need a lot of space because he's on the other side of the world. But, we're working all that out.
You missed my down under joke.
Oh, down under. Oh, I get it. Down under. Yeah. And he is good.
That's awesome. Well, it's funny you talk about he's got other skills. In my sexual history, which again is going to be a part of the book, I had to learn other ways. The one thing about me, even though I had erectile dysfunction, I literally and figuratively had huge balls. I would throw myself into sexual situations that I had without being able to get a firm erection. I had no business being in, but I did it anyway.
I love it.
And I learned over time and working with therapists along the way of my lifetime that I over-sexualized myself.
Oh, okay.
I was constantly in search of finding what it would take to turn me on so my dick would get hard.
Okay, got it.
And so I
You're
did
overcompensating.
way overcompensating.
Oh, this is so great. Well, I hope I get to come back. I got to write some more boner jokes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This evolves. I want to bring you back and we'll talk. I want to get into some of your training and your relationship. Now, your program, is it Relationship Reboot?
Yeah, I'm calling it Relationship Reboot. And then there's a mini course we're calling Relationship Rehab. And one of my jokes as a comedian, I say I'm a relationship coach. I help stop marriages by not getting into them. And I have some books on Amazon, Men Are From Mars, Women Are Bipolar.
Awesome.
I'm Okay, You're the Asshole. And then my latest one is It Takes Two to Teabag. But
Okay, I love that.
it's so fun because I think men and women we love each other, and then we can't live with or without each other, and you're either in a relationship or trying to get out of a relationship or fix. There's everybody's got stuff.
That's
And
amazing.
if we can keep laughing about it and learning together, isn't that why we're here on the planet?
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's time to wrap it up, but all of the links that you just mentioned will be in the show notes. It'll be on brokenboner.com
Awesome.
and on the website. Elaine, you were my first. How was it for you?
Oh my God, it was so good. I feel like I need a cigarette a little bit, but I'm all juicy and moist. I sweated. I'm schwitzing. It was great.
I'd like to say I got an erection, but unless I actually pumped myself up, that'd be a lie.
I keep wanting to just kind of grab your balls. Like I'm just just like big balls. Like I love that word balls. I think it's
I
one of the
actually
most.
have 3 now.
Okay, so next
I
time
do.
I'm
There's
on the West Coast,
testicles and the pump is in the middle.
I had the image.
Okay, that's it for today. I'm totally spent, and people, I need to go take a nap. If you'd like to call and leave a question or comment for the show, 405-592-6637. That's 405-59-BONER. You can find me on Facebook at Broken Boner Radio or danielcanfield.com, or you can even follow me on Twitter at Real Broken Boner. I want to give a shout out to my production team at podcastfasttrack.com. Carrie, I couldn't do this without you. And I can't wait to talk more about my erectile dysfunction with all of you in future episodes. In the meantime, keep it real.